Welcome to The Testament, a podcast that spotlights the amazing real-life stories of everyday people who've been transformed by their surrender to Jesus Christ. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of one of the many miraculous before and after accounts of lives forever changed by encountering the Savior.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Testament Podcast. My name is Jeff Keck.
And I'm Darius Lowe, aka D-Lo, and we are accompanied here by our friend Jace. Jace, tell us about yourself, man.
Yes, sir. I am a freshman at Hardin-Simmons. My name is Jace Bell. I'm from Amarillo, Texas, and I am majoring in exercise science, soon to be a PT student.
That's outstanding.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I just thought of something, but that's okay. Let's roll on.
Oh, gosh. So you said you're majoring in what, Jace?
Exercise science.
Exercise science. What is that?
So it's like the science of like exercise, like rehabilitation and like recovering from injuries, and how do we like help people through that and stuff, which will lead me on to physical therapy school, which I want to be a physical therapist eventually.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, because it sounds exactly like PT. I was like, ex-athlete here. I try to claim as much as I can because I'm not an athlete no more. But I try to claim it as much as I can. I'm gonna hang on to that title. but yeah, that's exactly what that sounded like. So that's cool. That's cool. What made you get into that really?
So when I was at the end of my junior year, I was playing volleyball with some friends and I blew my knee out, tore my meniscus.
Oh, wow.
Not the fun stuff. But
Done it?
then
I've done that too.
Yeah. And so then, I had to have surgery and I went through PT and I was like, this is something I could definitely see myself doing in the future. I like to help people. So, I was like, this is something that I'm actually pretty interested in. So then I started to look into it more and I was like, I think this is what I want to do when I go to college. So
Yeah, keep going, man. I've had 2 knee surgeries. I'm about to get a partial knee replacement here in a couple of weeks.
Sheesh.
And so physical therapy, I'm with you, man. As I was like, my surgeries were late in my career, so I was like, if I didn't have a great career, I'd probably pursue that.
Yeah.
To help people.
Yes, sir.
Get back up to where they're going. There's a lot of science in there too, which I think is really cool
Mm-hmm.
too, and how the body works and stuff. So that's pretty neat. I'm glad you're pursuing that. It's a good career field.
Yeah, that's really cool. It's really dope too. It's always going to be needed as well, just with sports, being, everlasting, not everlasting, but you know what I mean? Everlasting until Jesus comes back. Well, who knows? Actually, that's a really good, I've always wondered that, like, will there be sports, in heaven and in the new earth, is that going to be a thing, Like,
Is that the only place the Cowboys are going to get back to the Super Bowl?
Probably.
No.
Probably.
Probably.
Unfortunately.
Sadly.
Fortunately for you Cowboys fans, that's
hey, I'm a Cowboys fan.
You are.
It's been a rough however many years. All my life at least.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I remember Super Bowls in the 90s. I do.
I don't. I'm with Jace on that one. I don't remember a time when the Cowboys were.
Oh yeah. Oh, we had the whole family at the house watching it. Oh yeah.
That's
good times.
Crazy. These are good times. Good times.
I could only imagine.
I can't. I'm not a Cowboys fan, so it doesn't really affect me either way. But no, man, Jay. So, what's up? Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're good.
Nah, I want to hear what you got to say.
I was gonna say I'm also a Mavs fan, so they're what helps me just keep going. They give me hope.
That's true. That's true. So like Dallas, it still has the Mavs and it still has the Stars, which are normally pretty consistent, in being successful.
And the World Series Texas Rangers, which didn't even make it to playoffs this year, but
that's crazy how it just flipped like that. Like one last year, and then the very next year, it's just they're not good at all. That's wild to me.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's insane. Well, Jace, as you already know, and our viewers as well, the Testament Podcast, it's all about the lives changed as a result of Jesus, right? And so, tell us a little bit about your story and Let's get into the meat and potatoes.
Let's get into it.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
yeah.
So I grew up in a Christian household. My family, they did a very good job of raising me. Went to church every Sunday. They taught me the word like at home and stuff. But me, I was the middle child. I was very hard-headed, kind of a knucklehead. So when I was in 8th grade, let's start here. When I was in 7th grade, I moved schools from Canyon, Texas to Bushland, Texas, just about 30 minutes away. And so, I was the new kid, didn't really know anyone. It was kind of hard for me to fit in for a while. And then, I started to make some friends, and they really weren't the best for me at all, especially for my walk with Jesus. And so then when we were in 8th grade, that's really when that's when I found myself the most lost. I was like cussing all the time. I was, we were very like destructive. Like there was one time we found like these abandoned sheds and stuff, and we just like vandalized them, just doing like all this crazy destructive stuff. Like I was just found myself so far from Jesus. I wasn't praying. I wasn't reading my word. I was just like, so lost. And, thinking back of it, I'm just like really sad just to even think about like how lost I was. And then, we got caught for, doing all that vandalism. My parents caught us and stuff. And so, they were pretty upset about that. And, I got in a ton of trouble, and that was kind of like my wake up call. Like, what am I doing with my life? Like, this is not who I am. This is not, who God called me to be. So I eventually found some new friends. They were definitely better for me. They loved the Lord and stuff. But the problem with that was still, I wasn't pursuing a relationship with God on my own. And so I was still, living like a lukewarm Christian life, still, far away from God. And so I pretty much walked throughout my first 3 years of high school just like that. Like I prayed on my own sometimes, but I wasn't reading the word. I really only went to church on Wednesdays and Sundays, and that was it. And I just found that life, it really didn't fulfill me. I got so caught up with like sports and basketball primarily because that was my main sport. And then when I was a senior in high school, I was getting ready to play my senior year of basketball, and we just got a new coach, and there was like some things that weren't going right with the coach, and he wasn't the best guy, and his morals were not where it should be and stuff. And so me and my family, we just kind of sat down and talked, and we were like, it might be best for me to step away from basketball, and just, which was really hard just to even think about because I've played it since I was like 5 years old. And so I was like, I put all this work into it, and just to step away like that is pretty hard. It's pretty difficult. So we prayed a lot about that, and I felt God like really calling to me, really saying like, I want you to come back to me, and like you're not pursuing me the way that you should be. And so that really hit hard for me, and I was like, yeah, I'm not pursuing God the way that I should be and the way that he has called me to. So I stepped away from basketball after like our first tournament of the year. And then, so that was in December of last December. And then after that, I started to pursue the Lord very heavily. I started reading my word all the time. I took a pastor's class, or I took a class with one of my pastors, and we like went over like this book. It's called Basic Christianity. It's a really good book. I would very much recommend it. But so I took a class with one of my pastors. I started like normally during school, I would be watching basketball and stuff during my free time. I started listening to sermons in my free time. I started just devoting like all of my time to God instead of like devoting it to basketball. And so then after that, I started to truly see changes in my life, and I started to see places that God was calling me to. And I started to see like how I could fulfill God's mission for me on this earth. And so one of those big things was like pouring into the guys at my church. Since I quit basketball, I was able to like start making time for them. So I would like sometimes I would go like pick them up from school and like, take them to eat, take them to movies, like go hang out with them and just like, talk to them, do Bible studies with them. I started just to be able to pour all this time into them. And I just started to see some real fruit being produced from it. And ever since I stepped away, and, and all that eventually led up to like doing my podcast and having time for all that too. So it was honestly like the best thing that ever happened to me was stepping away from basketball, which is, crazy for me to say because it's something that I put so much time and so much effort into. But that was like the biggest thing.
Yeah. So you think God recognized and kind of told you through the Holy Spirit, hey man, your idol is this game,
Yes.
right? And the game's fine. He's probably telling you the game's fine, but you've made it an idol.
Yes, sir. I put it so far like above anything, like everything else. Like I made it such a priority, and I just put all my time and effort into it, and I wasn't putting any of my time and effort into my relationship with Jesus. And so he's like, so pretty much God was like, you need to take this away so that you can fill that time with me instead. And so that's what happened.
So you mentioned the book, Basic Christianity. Is that the one by John Scott?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I just want to make sure that that's clear because some of our listeners get interested in the book. I want to make sure that we're looking at the right one. It's called John Scott. The foreword was done by Rick Warren. So it's just want to make sure that's clear. Anyway, moving on from there. So you had mentioned lukewarm Christian life. Now tell me again. So you really last December is when you surrendered everything to Christ and said, okay, we're going to build a relationship and get rid of basketball, right?
Yes, sir.
But when was it again? Tell me again that when you accepted Jesus, because you accepted him first, but then kind of didn't live that life.
Yes, sir. So actually, I accepted him into my life in second grade, and that's when I got baptized. But I like to say like that's when I accepted Jesus. But when I became a follower of Jesus was last December when I started to follow his will and his way for my life. That's what I like to say.
Okay, so now let's look at, kind of getting off the track, but kind of on the track at the same time. So let's look at between second grade when you accepted Christ and December of last year.
Yes, sir.
Between those years, you had described it as these are my worst years. I was involved in all kinds of things that I wasn't supposed to be involved in. I was getting in trouble all the time. I was just disregarding righteous living, if you will, right?
Yes, sir.
Do you think that was enemy infiltration? And I'll explain what I mean. When a new believer becomes a believer, if that new believer is not discipled consistently, and if that new believer is not taught, like that's our responsibility as believers is to continue teaching new believers what it is, help them understand what it is that just happened. But when you become a believer, especially at a young age, the enemy, in my opinion, tends to derail people and try to keep them from that relationship with Christ. Do you feel like between second grade and senior year of high school, do you feel like that's, I know you say you were a bad kid, whatever, but do you think that was enemy influence in your life?
Yes, sir. It absolutely was. I think, that was the enemy trying to keep me from, what God had for me and just hold off on that as long as he possibly could.
Yes, we're going to get into some other things that are kind of what God's really leading you into as we move along here a little bit. So I don't want to try to ruin everything right here in the first few minutes.
Yes,
but
sir.
In an overall picture, do you feel like you now see what God has set you aside for?
Yes, sir. I think I'm starting to see it, and maybe I probably don't see the full picture still, but I can definitely see what God is doing, and I can see and I can definitely look back and see, how God has used me for his glory, even just from these past 10 months 10 months it's been, I see how he's just used me for the glory of his kingdom. And I want to just continue on that path, for the rest of my life, and just continue to, follow his will and his way for my life.
That's awesome. And I want to talk about one of those things that God has kind of put you into in this stage of your life, or at least before you left to come to Hardin Simmons in Abilene. Where'd you say you lived at before then?
Amarillo, Texas.
Amarillo, Texas. Amarillo by morning.
That's what everybody does when I tell them I'm from Amarillo.
I love that song. Look, King George can't get over it. Anyway, so
I don't know what that is.
at the I'm sorry, D'Lo. It's George Strait. It's country music. It's classic. You can't beat it. It's just, I can play it on guitar. I bring my guitar. I'll play
Texas.
No, it's not X's. Yes, he did that too, but that's not what we're talking about. Moving on from D'Lo not knowing anything about music. Let's move on a little bit. Okay, talking about what God has led you into. So you in Amarillo at your church there, you were teaching pre-K classes and 2nd through 5th grade. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How do I know this? Because you have a podcast and I listen to it. But before all that, I you also filled out the bio and everything for us. It kind of said some of that stuff too. But doing something that, what's the way I want to ask this question? How did God lead you to teaching young kids like that in church? Which, by the way, and I'm going to go ahead and knock it, is something that we can hardly get adults to do. How did God get you or convince you that, hey, this is what I want you to do?
Yes, sir. I'm very glad you asked this because I'm very excited to talk about this. So I actually started helping in the classes when I was in 7th grade, which was definitely good for me. I was still, being defiant at that time, like I said previously, but I was helping in those classes. And as a helper, I didn't really do much. I just kind of, helped get the supplies and set up the activities for the kids and stuff, but I really wasn't like teaching them. And then, so my mom is the children's minister at our church. And so that's kind of how I got into it. She's like, do you want to help in these classes? And I'm like, yeah, I think I can help you out, help in the classes. And so that's how I started it, because she became the children's minister when I was in 6th grade at our church. And then I started helping out in the classes when I was in 7th grade. And then I've been doing it ever since then. And then I think I was a junior in high school when I was not being a helper, but me and 2 of my friends, we started like teaching the classes, and we started teaching the kids because I think, my mom was like, do you want to start like teaching the classes with 2 of your friends who are also guys? And I was like, yeah, I think that'd be good. I think it'd be a lot of fun. And so, we were, and I think we did an okay job for a while. But then, when I really started to see that change in my life during senior year, I think that's when I really started to be able to speak into the kids that I was teaching. And I just saw a difference in the way that I was teaching. And, just there was more maturity. There was more knowledge that I was able to pour out into them. And so that was really cool to see as well. But yeah, I got into that because my mom was a children's minister, and I started by helping, and then she just asked me to be a teacher. And then you told me, you said, we don't see that much in high school guys, which I started to think about that, because at my church, I would say at least 95% of the kids in our youth group, or 95% of the guys in our youth group, help either teach or help in a classroom.
Wow.
Yeah, at least 95%. And then you said that we don't see that very much. And I started thinking about it, and I was like, like my friends at school and stuff, because my church is like, there's people from like a bunch of different schools that go to my church. But like my friends from my school, I was like the only one that really helped serve and teach in a class. And so I started thinking about that. I was like, you really don't see that much in guys. And I was like, I find that very interesting. And I think it's because at my church, we saw people doing it, and it just helps, you just bring them in and you're like, hey, you should come teach help out in the class, come teach a class. And, they're like, what, that sounds like fun. And so really, like, we have most of our youth group back there helping out teaching on Sunday mornings. And so it's just like how the culture is at our church. We preach so much on like the importance of serving and, you know, pouring into the church, giving back to it. And so it's just like we're all encouraging each other just to go teach and go, you know, help out back there.
Let's brag on your church a bit. What church is it?
It's Harvest Connection.
Harvest Connection?
Yes, sir. It's spelled CONNEXION.
Oh, somebody decided to be original. Harvest Connection in Amarillo. Hey, Harvest
Yes,
Connection listeners in Amarillo, good job. Good
yes,
job.
sir.
That's amazing.
Yes, sir. I love my church. You know, I love our values and you know what we've built our standards on, and I love that I'm able to teach all the kids with all my friends at my church. You know, some of my best friends in the whole wide world go to that church, and it's just honestly some of the best times we have is teaching those classes back there, and just being able to see like those kids, just being able to see them go and get like baptized and see how much they grow. It's really cool. It's really cool to see.
Well, bravo. And for all of you listening from Harvest Connection, here's your challenge. Come be on the Testament podcast. Tell us about your story. Can reach out, thetestamentpod.com. Connect with us. Get Jace. He can get with me. Come on. We want to hear it. We want to hear your stories. There's awesome, great things going on in that church.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I was just gonna touch on that too. That's so fire. Jeff and I actually did an episode on a podcast on this podcast. Tune into that. Some episodes ago, Jeff can tell you how to get there. It's been a hot minute, but we had an episode um, on the Testament about, you know, serving in church or the lack thereof, you know, and when I say serving in church, you have people that are, you know, serving in church, you know, like that is kind of common and normal, but there is this, or at least there has been, you know, in the American church, Big C church, there has been this attitude of, you know, what can I get out of the church? You know, what does the church do for me rather than what do I do for the church? You know, and that's what the original purpose of the church is for, is a body of believers that come together and worship and glorify God in unison, but also within that, part of that worshiping God aspect is giving back to the church, giving myself to the church. And so I think it's something that's becoming a lost importance. You know, I feel like, not trying to call any preachers or pastors out, but I feel like it's not taught enough. I feel like it's not spoken about enough. And yeah, man, so it's just awesome to hear, you know, that the church is doing that, you know, and really kind of, you know, pushing that, and not just also pushing it, but having people in place to be examples for that as well. So that's really dope, man. That's really, really dope. Yeah.
Do
Man,
you feel like, real quick before D'Lo moves on with the next question, do you think that by teaching these kids, do you think that has helped to improve your relationship with Christ?
Absolutely. Being able to teach those kids, it really, I think, I don't know. I think it's really good for me, and it's good for me to, you know, learn how to do that and learn how to spread the word. And I think, you know, teaching kids is like a good starting spot, because, you know, they're new to this, like they want to learn. And so it's a good starting spot for spreading God's word and just, you know, showing them, you know, how God wants us to live our life. And it also, you know, it helps me to, it just gives me hope to like just be able to pour into I think, how do I want to explain this? I think pouring into the next generation it's really good for me. And it's something that like I value very highly in my life. And I think, you know, God calls us to pour out into other people, and it's really good for us to, you know, take what we've learned and take what, you know, God has shown us and taught us, and pour it out into the next generation. And I think, you know, it's just been really good for me. It's kind of hard to explain, but
that's very well explained. Outstanding.
yeah, that's awesome, Jace, man. for the sake of time, I won't get into it, but I definitely had a few more questions on that topic. But I won't harp you with crazy amount of questions on one topic. But but man, kind of shifting a little bit. I'm talking about HSU and Hardin Simmons University. You this being your first year there. In the great words of Jeff, let's brag on your HSU a little bit. Let's yeah, man. I just wanted to ask, kind of what or how did God, that's the better question, the better way to phrase it is, how did God kind of lead you to make that decision to go to Hardin Simmons University?
Yes, sir. So when I was a sophomore in high school, my sister had just started college at Hardin Simmons. So she was a freshman, and we went down there around October, sometime around there, to go visit her, and she was showing us around the campus. And we got to the spot of the circle with the wall, like the big walls and all the names on it of all the graduates. And she was just showing us like, hey, this is where like everyone who graduates from Hardin Simmons, their name is put on one of these plaques and on this wall. And I just felt God spoke to me like, hey, your name's going to be up there one day. And I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. I'm still a sophomore, so we'll see what happens. And then so I was touring colleges the summer after my junior year. And I toured Hardin Simmons, and I just felt like this overwhelming peace when I was touring it. I was like, man, I could really see myself there. And then my tour guide gave me a personalized letter, and she wrote to me. She was like, I'm so glad, that you came on this tour, and I hope that you just go wherever God leads you. I hope that you just go to that college, and I hope you thrive there and just do God's work. And when I received that letter, I was like, all right. I was like, God, you're definitely calling me to Hardin Simmons, undoubtedly. And so that's when I decided. I was like, yeah, I've got to go to Hardin Simmons. And it also helped because my sister was there, because I would have never even found out about Hardin Simmons if it wasn't my sister. But it was definitely a God thing that I'm at Hardin Simmons.
Yeah, that's dope, man. That's real cool. That's real cool. So what is your, and again, I know obviously it's first year, but what's your favorite thing so far about HSU?
My favorite thing, it's definitely the people. I've met some really great people. One of them being Sydney, your daughter. She's pretty cool. But I've really enjoyed, building those relationships and, just getting to really know these people that we're all from different backgrounds. And it's really
You're talking
cool
about my daughter, not D'Lo's daughter, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I ain't got none of them. I ain't got none of them yet. So I'm not even old enough to have a daughter in college. If I had a daughter in college, there's a problem. Something is wrong. Okay.
Yes, sir. But yeah, just being able to build those relationships and just get to know all these people from different backgrounds. And it's just been really cool to see. And it's been, it's still very new, but it's been fun so far. And I've really enjoyed it.
Well, that's a great time. It's also a hard time. I mean, you're on a Christian campus, which I love being on Christian college campuses. I really do. They're just an amazing presence there. But the enemy is also attacking there as well, just like he would anywhere else. But pop quiz, who's the president of HSU?
Eric Bruntmeyer.
And do you have his personal cell phone number?
I do have his personal cell phone number.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
So do I. Anybody can have it, by the way. All you got to do is go back in the Testament podcast to episode number 35, which was launched in August of 2021, where I interview Eric Bruntmeyer, and he broadcasts it out on everybody, his cell phone number. It says, just call me.
Yes, sir.
Great guy.
I was about to say that too. I was like, he put his phone number up because I listened to that episode probably 2 weeks ago. Yes, sir. And yeah.
So other than that episode, did you get his phone number in a different way?
Yes, sir. I think he gave it out. He
says he gives it to everybody.
Cowboy Connect, I think.
Yeah.
And so I think that's when I put it in my phone. Yes, sir.
Yeah. He does respond to it too.
That's crazy.
I haven't texted him, but yeah, I do have it just in case.
If you listen to his episode, you'll hear him. He'll say that, like on snow days, he'll get texts from students that are like, call it.
That's hilarious. That's hilarious.
What a great guy. Yeah, I want to brag on Eric for a little bit too. Episode number 35, roll it on back. He's in there.
Yes, sir. It was a good episode.
Okay, so you think Hardin-Simmons is your deal for the next 4 years, right? You don't see yourself going anywhere.
Well, technically, like with credits wise, I'm a second semester sophomore because
Okay,
I took
let's
so
not
many
get
college
technical
classes in
here.
high
So you're
school.
going to graduate early, okay?
Technically, yes, sir. But
Okay, so let's talk about your podcast, man. So how old are you right now?
I am 19 years old.
Okay, and you have what, 7 or 8 episodes out there right now?
I've got 9, actually.
9. Okay,
Yes,
so
sir.
9 episodes. So you started this over the summer, right before you went into Hardin-Simmons,
Yes,
right?
sir. Yes, sir, I
Okay.
did.
And I think I've listened to 7 of those 9.
Okay.
So I got some catching up to do.
Yes, sir.
How many Testament podcasts have you listened to?
I think I've listened to 3.
Okay, well, you got
So
some
you're doing
catching
a
up
lot
to do
better than
too.
me. You did. I think I've got
You've
a
only
lot
got
of catching up to
151
do.
to go.
Yes,
Anyway,
sir.
so no, forget all that. Starting a podcast, it was a hard thing for me. I didn't really know how to do that. I really didn't know anything about editing or audio or how to get podcasts out there in the world or any of that kind of stuff, right? So that was a big learning curve. God wanted me to do it years before I ever started. That's my own disobedience that led to taking so long before starting it. But here you are between high school and just about to start college, and you decide, hey, I want to start a faith-based podcast, you know, and talking about Jesus, which is something that people your age don't necessarily stand up for a lot sometimes. So tell us about your podcast and tell us how you felt God leading you to do that.
Yes, sir. So I actually started like the Defending Your Faith. I guess you could call it like the brand or whatever. I started that. I think it was in January or that it was either January or February of my senior year. And I felt God really called me. I'd written up like some devotions and stuff, and I felt God calling me like, "Hey, you need to post this on Instagram." And so I was like, that might be a good idea. And so I was like, what if I just like make a second like Instagram account and I could just like post devotionals and words of encouragement and stuff like that on there. And so I did that, and I made the second account, and it took me forever to come across the name, but I settled on Defending Your Faith. And so I started by like writing up devotionals, posting them, and then all I did was type them in my notes and just take screenshots and post them on Instagram. And so that's how the Defending Your Faith started. And then I grew more and more. I did like a couple of interviews. I interviewed like some people at my church for like short little clips on the Instagram for like the reels and stuff. And so I did some of those, and then um, I I started like listening to podcasts and stuff. And I felt God called me like, hey, you need to be doing this. And so I put a lot of thought into that. And then I just and that was around the time where I was about to graduate. I just graduated. I've been putting a lot of thought into that, and I was like, okay, I think this is something I could do. And I was like, I don't really know where to start. And so I looked up some videos, and I did a lot of research on how to start. And then I researched some equipment, and then I found some good equipment on Amazon, and it was the perfect timing to where I just graduated. So I had like a ton of Amazon gift cards from graduation. So I was able to just compile all those together. And so I bought some mics and, all the equipment that I needed. And it was like the perfect amount too. I had like $20 of Amazon left over or something like that. So yeah, it was, it was like the perfect amount of money. I was like, all right, God. And so, but it was kind of hard to start. Like when you're starting with no one to teach you, and I spent probably 2 months in preparation, just learning how the equipment works, like how do I post this, like, all the stuff. Like it took me like 2 months, and then like getting people to, like scheduling times with people to come on the podcast, and finding the right people to come on the podcast. And then like preparing for the episodes, and then, all that stuff. It takes
It's
a
a
lot
lot
of
more
time.
work than people think it is, isn't it?
It
Yes,
was
it is.
so much. Like it's shocking how much work. I wasn't expecting that, but I kept going because I was like, this is something that God really wants me to do. So I kept going with it. I got my first episode recorded. I was like, that was awesome. It felt really good. And but then I ended up messing up the recording during my first episode. My friend's mic didn't record.
So
And
did I.
Did
My
you?
very first episode that
Oh,
I
no.
recorded never aired because I
Really?
destroyed the audio, and he and I were never able to meet again to schedule it, to do it again.
Man,
So the first recording I ever did, I totally messed up the audio, could not recover it, and it never aired.
that's terrible. But yeah, I ended up being able to recover some of it, and the sound quality is not great, but like I was like, I think it still needs to be published, so I did. And all the editing takes a while, and then I do all the like clips on Instagram and all that stuff. And so I mean, there's a lot that goes into it. But yeah, so I finally got my first episode posted probably about a month before I left for college. And then I was like, I'm going to just record as many episodes as I can before I leave, so that I can go into college and I can like just settle down and then find the right people and find the right places and all that stuff that I could do my podcast. And so that's kind of how the podcast got started up.
So what do you feel like God wants you to do with this podcast?
I think he just wants me to like just continue to do it. There are some people that I've found at Hardin Simmons that I think would be like perfect for the podcast, and I definitely need to talk to them. I need to set up times with them to get an episode going with them. But I think he just wants me to continue it, and I think I won't be able to do as much as I was. Definitely not during the summer, just because there's school's so busy and all that stuff. But I think he wants me to just continue to do it, even with school being busy and stuff. Just he wants me to continue to do it and put the words that he's put into me out there, and get people on the podcast. That just have stuff to say. And so he's shown me some people for sure that I want on the podcast, and I think would be really good. So
That's awesome. That's fire, man. Can y'all hear me? Oh, okay. For a second, I was like, I didn't know if y'all could or not, but
Well, if you
cool.
step up to the mic,
So you mean you can't hear me when I'm talking this?
then maybe we could hear you.
So you mean you can't hear me when I'm talking?
And now you see why I badger him.
Oh man, I have no love over here, Jace. I have no love. But what I do want to know is, what love do you have as far as favorite like verse, scripture, song, kind of what's really speaking to you right now in this season?
Man, what a tie-in. I like how you tied that in. That was just great. Good job.
Hey, if you do want some love, man, you can come over on the Defending Your Faith podcast as a co-host. Just putting that out there.
A co-host. Oh, job offer.
Hey,
Job offer.
I might have to.
Jace,
I pay him pretty well, man. I don't know if you can get him away. I pay him real well.
Oh yeah. Well, I don't think I could pay you very well because I can't even pay myself for this. But you can come over.
It's okay.
There's no money made on this podcast either.
Oh man, no, but yeah, my favorite verse right now, I would say my favorite verse all time, Proverbs 3:5-6. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Do not depend on your understanding. Seek His will in all you do, and He will show you which path to take. I love that verse. I go back to that constantly, just like because I like to be in control and I like to, just like do what I want to do. But it's like, no, you need to trust in God, and then He will show you where He wants you, and He will lead you to where you can go and build and grow His kingdom. But I'll say the verse that really speaks to me right now is Romans 8:5-6. For those who live according to the flesh set their minds on the things of the flesh, but those who live according to the Spirit set their minds on the things of the Spirit. For to set the mind on the flesh is death, but to set the mind on the Spirit is life and peace. And what that really means to me is like what we set our minds on is what's going to be shown through like the fruit that we produce, meaning like our actions, our thoughts, and like what we say, and how we treat people. And so that's something that I've been like thinking about a lot recently is like, what have I been setting my mind on? Like, is my mind caught up in like school and like maybe like football or, all that stuff? Or is my mind, set on Christ? And, how is that going to be shown through like how I live my life and how I treat people? So that's what I've been trying to focus on a lot recently is, just making sure that, my mind is on Christ and my thoughts and like everything that I do is like, representing him well and glorifying him well.
Good word, man. Good word. Hey, tell us the name of your podcast and where we can find that.
Yes, sir. So the name of my podcast is Defending Your Faith, and you can find it. All the episodes are on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and YouTube. And then you can also find me on Instagram. It's defending_your_faith. And so you can find, there's also links in my Instagram bio with the Spotify link, the Apple Podcast link, and the YouTube link. And also on my Instagram, you'll find like clips from the podcast and words of encouragement. I've got a word that I've been writing up recently, like a little devotional type word that I'm going to post probably here in a couple of days, not really related to the podcast, but just like a word of encouragement. So you can find those on the Instagram as well. So I would highly recommend going over and giving it a follow.
Jace Bell, man, thanks so much for coming on. Appreciate your time.
Yes, sir. Thanks for having me. It was great.
Yeah, for sure. It
I
was a
really
good time.
I like what y'all are doing here, man. It's good stuff.
Thanks, buddy. We'll talk soon.
Absolutely.
Folks, if you want to learn more about who Jesus is, visit us at thetestamentpod.com. That's thetestamentpod.com. And click on the gospel message at the top of the page. Also, you can click on the Testament Podcast tab and learn more about our podcast and see what our most recent episodes are that we've launched. In addition, we're always looking for guests who want to brag on God. So please send yourself or someone you know to thetestamentpod.com and drop us a line with your interest, or email us at thetestamentpod@gmail.com. We'll send you all the information we need in order to book you for an interview. Remember, do your part. Help us get these testimonies out there. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram, and then like and share our posts so your friends can see what we're doing too. So thanks everybody for listening. Bye.